when one young woman bought a condemned airplane for $400. The internet aggressively mocked her. They stopped laughing when she revealed the insulated sanctuary hidden inside the rusting metal. Before we document her blueprint, please subscribe, leave a like, and comment which state you are watching from right now. In the United States in 2026, the mathematics of basic survival for the working class have irreversibly collapsed under predatory economic policies and corporate real estate speculation. The national average rent for a dilapidated, entry-level one-bedroom apartment in any mid-size American city has officially surpassed $100 to $800 a month, a figure that excludes the exorbitant secondary costs of mandatory utilities, high-speed internet required for employment, and compulsory renter's insurance. A 19-year-old American woman working a standard 40-hour week at a service sector job takes home just enough net income after federal and state taxes to cover that base rent, leaving a mathematical zero on the balance sheet for groceries, healthcare, vehicle maintenance, or building any form of emergency savings. The American economic machine has successfully and systematically pushed Generation Z out of the traditional housing market before they are even legally old enough to sign a long-term mortgage or build a credit history. This document is an unromanticized clinical investigation into how one 19-year-old woman bypassed that collapsing economic system. She did not take out predatory high-interest personal loans she could never hope to repay, and she did not move into the back seat of a cramped passenger sedan to be relentlessly harassed by local police departments and municipal parking enforcement officers. Instead, she executed a financial transaction that the internet overwhelmingly laughed at when the salvage liquidator posted the bizarre bill of sale online. She purchased a condemned, gutted commercial twin-engine cargo fuselage from an aviation boneyard, paying a heavy tow flatbed truck to drag it deep inside a Pacific Northwest logging forest. The final purchase price was exactly $400, paid entirely in cash to a salvage liquidator. That specific number is less than a quarter of a standard apartment security deposit in any major metropolitan area on the West Coast. When the liquidator's unfiltered photos of the hauled fuselage surfaced on a local auction group, the comment sections were immediately filled with visceral, unrelenting mockery. The public saw a rusting aluminum tube sinking into the damp forest floor. They called it a naive return-to-nature fantasy that would inevitably end in freezing temperatures, disease, or financial ruin. But this was never a whimsical art project, nor was it an aesthetic trend engineered for social media validation. It was a cold, calculated survival equation. The $400 bought her a permanent, physical exit strategy from a rent economy that was mathematically designed to extract every dollar she earned until the day she died. The stark reality of that initial $400 transaction is brutal and devoid of any cinematic romance. She did not buy a functioning airplane, nor did she buy a piece of luxury off-grid real estate. She bought raw, decaying industrial scrap metal. The 1980s-era cargo fuselage had been aggressively stripped of its valuable turbine engines, its complex electrical wiring harnesses, its sophisticated cockpit instrumentation, and its heavy landing gear years ago by aviation scavengers. It was essentially an empty, vibrating aluminum cylinder sitting directly on the wet, acidic dirt of the forest. The $400 price tag was not an arbitrary number negotiated with a quirky local. It was literally the exact, calculated scrap weight value of the 2024 T3 aerospace aluminum alloy itself on the regional salvage market. But the real, calculated value of this transaction was in what the decaying metallic structure legally represented to the local county government. In the incredibly strict, labyrinthine, and often punitive zoning laws of American municipalities, an abandoned commercial aviation fuselage is not classified as a legal residential dwelling under Title 17 building codes. It is not classified as a recreational vehicle, a mobile home, or an accessory dwelling unit requiring extensive permitting. Sitting on a remote, unzoned 1-acre parcel of inherited forestry land that belonged to a distant family member, the metallic structure exists in a massive, unregulatable legal blind spot. There are no building permits required, and no minimum square footage requirements to adhere to because, technically and legally speaking, The massive object is classified by the county auditor as industrial waste awaiting final disposal. The local county code enforcement officers, who are severely underfunded, understaffed, and overworked, simply do not spend their resources inspecting industrial waste dumps for residential compliance. By purchasing a piece of heavy industrial trash, she entirely sidestepped the bureaucratic machinery that makes building a permitted tiny home or an off-grid cabin legally impossible and financially ruinous for the working class. She did not buy a house. She bought a massive legal loophole that local authorities had no established legal framework or protocol for closing, securing her physical presence on the land without triggering a single property tax reassessment or zoning violation notice. The physical and environmental obstacles of attempting to live inside a bare, uninsulated aluminum tube in the wilderness are genuinely catastrophic and potentially lethal. The internet's initial wave of mockery was, from a purely scientific and architectural standpoint, fundamentally correct about the brutal physics of the situation. The primary enemy here is not public opinion, internet trolls, or municipal code enforcement officers knocking on the door. The absolute primary enemy is the unyielding law of thermodynamics. Aviation-grade aluminum is a nearly perfect thermal conductor, possessing a thermal conductivity rate of roughly 237 watts per meter Kelvin. In the peak of the summer heat, the bare metal fuselage acts exactly like a parabolic solar oven, absorbing solar radiation and baking the interior environment to a lethal, suffocating 120 degrees Fahrenheit. In the dead of winter, the metal rapidly bleeds out any internal heat into the freezing atmosphere, turning the cylinder into a deadly meat locker. But the deadliest, most insidious, and most immediate threat to human survival in this specific enclosed environment is condensation. A single human breath inside a sealed, uninsulated metal cylinder releases a specific volume of moisture vapor directly into the stagnant air. Within just a few days of occupation, that warm human moisture gathers on the freezing cold aluminum ceiling, reaches its physical dew point, drips constantly down the curved interior walls, and rapidly breeds Stachybotrys chartarum, commonly known as toxic black mold, a biological agent which permanently destroys human lung tissue. There are no romantic, golden hour sunsets viewed through vintage aviation portholes during this grueling phase of the project. The first 3 weeks on site were a miserable, exhausting, and deeply unglamorous physical war against pervasive iron rust, the deeply embedded, toxic, and carcinogenic smell of decades-old Skydrol hydraulic fluid, and the aggressive nesting of local field mice carrying potentially fatal hantavirus. This is the hazardous reality that aesthetic van life videos deliberately skip over to maintain their sponsorships. To survive inside a metal tube in a Pacific Northwest forest, the hostile physics of the environment must be aggressively, scientifically, and systematically countered through engineering before a single piece of furniture is moved in. Step 1 of the rigorous survival operation is establishing the absolute thermal envelope. The non-negotiable priority of the entire build is stopping the devastating thermal transfer between the harsh exterior environment and the interior living space. Standard fiberglass roll insulation, the cheap kind universally used in suburban tract housing, is completely useless in this specific aerospace application because it acts exactly like a giant sponge, passively absorbing atmospheric condensation, holding the trapped water directly against the metal skin, and drastically accelerating the spread of black mold and structural rust. Instead, bypassing traditional methods entirely, she rented a commercial-grade, high-pressure compressor rig, donned a full-face chemical respirator suit, and sprayed exactly 3 inches of closed-cell polyurethane spray foam directly onto the interior curved aluminum walls. The dense, chemically cured foam is entirely rigid and highly structural, providing a massive combined insulation value of R21 against the extreme outside temperatures. Crucially, unlike fiberglass, closed-cell foam acts as a 100% impermeable vapor barrier. The ambient human moisture generated by breathing, sweating, and cooking can no longer physically reach the freezing metal skin, thereby entirely eliminating the deadly condensation cycle at the source. But the chemical insulation layer alone is not enough to survive the brutal sub-zero winter temperatures comfortably. The permanent architectural fix for stabilizing the interior living space is the engineered air gap. She meticulously installed lightweight, flexible birch plywood interior panels attached to wooden furring strips, positioning them exactly 2 inches away from the cured foam layer. That deliberate 2-inch dead air space completely severs the thermal bridging between the highly conductive structural ribs of the plane and the interior living walls. It actively and passively prevents the exterior cold from transferring through the metal frame farm and penetrating into the living space. It is the exact same thermal, aerodynamic, and physical logic utilized in high-level aerospace engineering and commercial refrigeration units, applied here with absolute, unforgiving precision on a strictly managed $500 local hardware store budget. Step 2 is the meticulous engineering of the closed-loop electrical power and internal heating system. A standard, off-the-shelf household electric space heater draws roughly 1,500 watts of continuous AC power, which would completely and violently drain a massive off-grid battery bank in a matter of minutes, rendering the entire electrical system dead and freezing the occupant. Her survival power mathematics LIDEX relies entirely on a heavy-duty, 200 amp-hour lithium iron phosphate battery pack, salvage pulled directly from a wrecked electric vehicle at a regional scrapyard. This robust battery is paired directly through a highly efficient MPPT solar charge controller to 2 massive 400-watt monocrystalline solar panels, mounted perfectly flat on the highest external spine of the fuselage to aggressively catch the maximum southern solar exposure through the dense forest canopy. The solar array generates just enough daily electrical juice to run low-draw LED light strips, charge a laptop for remote work, and power a 12-volt marine water pump, but it offers zero capacity for running any device with a heavy electrical heating element. To survive the lethal -10-degree Pacific Northwest winter nights without relying on the fragile public electrical grid, she installed a 5-kilowatt Chinese diesel parking heater, bought brand new on a discount e-commerce site for precisely $120. It is the exact unbranded mechanical model utilized by long-haul truck drivers sleeping in frozen highway rest stops across the country. The unit's combustion chamber exhaust vents directly outside the fuselage through a heat-sealed, high-temperature steel port, completely eliminating the lethal risk of carbon monoxide poisoning, while the internal fan forcefully pushes intensely dry, safe, and heavily concentrated heat directly into the insulated cabin. Run on its absolute lowest continuous setting, the mechanical heater easily holds the perfectly insulated interior at a stable, comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit, while a massive blizzard rages just inches away outside. The total operating cost of this independent heating system is less than $1 a night in off-road agricultural diesel fuel. It is a tactical, hyper-efficient, and entirely decentralized engineering solution that completely removes her dependence on the collapsing, highly inflated, and unreliable public utility grid. Step 3 is the critical establishment of an independent, off-grid water supply chain and a zero-impact waste management protocol. There is obviously no municipal plumbing, no pressurized fire hydrants, and no public sewer hookups in the deep, unmapped logging forest. Her entire water infrastructure consists of 2 massive 275-gallon industrial IBC totes, purchased used from an agricultural supplier, sunken partially into the earth next to the fuselage, catching the heavy, highly predictable seasonal rainfall funneled from the curved aluminum roof via a custom riveted aluminum gutter system. The stored, untreated rainwater is drawn through a 12-volt marine diaphragm pump, passed forcefully through a dense 5-micron physical sediment filter to remove dirt, pollen, and particulate matter, pushed through a solid carbon block to remove chemical impurities, and finally blasted with a high-intensity inline UV light purifier to instantly destroy any biological pathogens. It is a completely independent, closed-loop potable water system that requires zero outside maintenance and completely bypasses the corrupt and expensive municipal water authority. Human waste management is handled with equal, unsentimental, and scientific ruthlessness. There is no expensive, heavily regulated underground septic tank to pump or permit. She utilizes a self-contained, manually rotating composting toilet filled with a precise 30-to-1 carbon-to-nitrogen ratio of basic coconut core and sphagnum peat moss. This system mechanically separates liquids from solids, manages the internal moisture levels flawlessly, and entirely eliminates hazardous bacterial odor through natural, heat-generating aerobic decomposition. Gray water, generated from the single stainless steel kitchen sink and shower basin, drains directly out of the fuselage and into a strictly engineered 30-foot gravel-lined French drain trench dug manually into the exterior soil. This trench safely, slowly, and legally filters the biodegradable soapy runoff back into the earth, maintaining a safe distance from any natural, unprotected groundwater sources. Every single biological and chemical process is handled entirely on-site without external reliance. The biological footprint of the entire operation is essentially absolute zero. The monthly municipal water, sewer, and trash collection bill is exactly $0. Step 4 involves the rigorous spatial mapping and the execution of hyperfunctional interior aesthetics. The interior architecture of a stripped commercial cargo plane is naturally a long, narrow, aggressively claustrophobic tunnel that induces immediate psychological panic and depression if it is poorly designed or heavily cluttered. To counter this psychological threat, she mathematically and obsessively mapped the cylindrical interior space into 350 distinct, heavily considered functional blocks, treating the physical layout of her home exactly like a strict, uncompromising cinematic storyboard where misordering a single frame causes total operational and psychological failure. Every single spatial block within the three-dimensional grid serves a highly specific, unyielding daily purpose. The sleeping quarters, the cooking station, the digital workspace, and the equipment storage areas are modularly and ruthlessly separated by function and daily routine. There is absolutely no wasted dead space permitted anywhere in the floor plan, and there are no useless, sentimental, decorative items taking up valuable oxygen, mental bandwidth, or physical square footage. The visual aesthetic of the finished interior is a direct, unapologetic reflection of her survivalist reality and highly disciplined mindset. It is heavily driven by a prestige TV drama visual aesthetic characterized by high contrast, moody lighting, and extreme, unromantic photorealism. Deep, heavy shadows are deliberately utilized to hide the mechanical realities, exposed wiring harnesses, and structural aluminum ribs of the fuselage, while sharp, intense, 4,000 Kelvin cold temperature task lighting directly illuminates the essential work surfaces, reading areas, and cooking stations. The entire space looks exactly like a highly detailed, cinematic set piece. Cold, precise, brutally efficient, and meticulously calculated to maximize human focus and operational efficiency. The interior atmosphere feels exactly like a high-tech, isolated command bunker built to quietly outlast the end of the world, contrasting violently and deliberately with the rusting, moss-covered, decaying aluminum exterior that is slowly being swallowed by the surrounding, encroaching forest. Step 5 is the absolute enforcement of strict operational security and unyielding behavioral discipline. For a 19-year-old woman living completely alone, miles away from the nearest paved county road, medical facility, or police station, physical safety does not come from cheap hardware store deadbolts, motion-activated floodlights, or an aggressive guard dog. Her safety comes exclusively from absolute, uncompromising stealth and environmental blending. The overarching security strategy is total visual, auditory, and digital invisibility. The operating logic is simple and brutally effective. If nobody in the county knows she is living inside the abandoned industrial trash, absolutely nobody comes out to the forest to bother her. This survival protocol requires a ruthless, unyielding adherence to light discipline at all times. Every single remaining aviation window is precisely fitted with custom-cut, heavy-duty, Mylar-backed, 100% blackout curtains, sealed tightly to the curved walls with industrial Velcro strips. From the outside, during the darkest hours of the night, the fuselage remains a silent, dark, abandoned silhouette completely indistinguishable against the black tree line. Not a single stray lumen of interior LED light bleeds out into the forest canopy to betray her physical position. Noise discipline is managed with equally critical, military-grade operational strictness. Her emergency backup, 2,000-watt gasoline inverter generator is only ever turned on during heavy, torrential rainstorms or high-wind events, exceeding 30 miles per hour, actively allowing the chaotic, roaring natural weather to completely mask the mechanical exhaust noise of the internal combustion engine. There are no loud outdoor gatherings permitted under any circumstances. There are no uninvited guests allowed to visit the exact coordinates. The precise geographic location of the plane is strictly guarded, and never, under any circumstances, geotagged on any social media platform or digital map. The entire sophisticated security apparatus is based exclusively on the fundamental premise of legally and physically not existing to the outside world at all. The final, documented reveal of the completed interior brutally and mathematically dismantles every single joke, insult, and skeptical comment made at her expense in the original internet comment sections. When the heavy, custom-fabricated, highly insulated steel door swings open on its reinforced hinges, the rusting, condemned, algae-covered shell of the plane instantly gives way to a flawlessly controlled, high-tech living environment. The insulated interior holds steady at a comfortable 72 degrees Fahrenheit, while a freezing Pacific Northwest storm rages against the exterior aluminum skin. She operates a high-speed satellite internet connection, cooks daily on a dual-burner propane camping stove, and showers with on-demand, pressurized hot water, heated by a tankless portable propane unit. The thousands of internet commentators who loudly and publicly laughed at her initial $400 purchase are currently, as of this exact moment, handing over $24,000 a year in hard-earned, post-tax income to massive corporate property management firms. They pay this exorbitant premium for the dubious privilege of living behind paper-thin drywall, using broken shared laundry machines in dark basements, and begging a hostile corporate landlord who aggressively ignores basic structural maintenance requests. Her total, comprehensive capital expenditure for the entire fuselage project, meticulously tracked in a master spreadsheet, including the initial cost of the plane, the heavy tow transport, the chemical spray foam, the complete solar setup, the diesel heater, the water filtration system, and all interior building materials, was exactly $14,500. Starting in month 3 of the operation, her total monthly living expense, factoring in agricultural diesel fuel, satellite internet subscription, and basic bulk food, dropped to less than $150 a month. The merciless factual mathematical balance sheet proves exactly who is actually sane in this economic scenario. She successfully and legally outsmarted a predatory, rigged housing market that was mathematically and intentionally designed to keep her entire generation trapped in perpetual, inescapable financial debt. This documentation is not a feel-good human interest story, a video documenting a teenager forced to turn abandoned industrial scrap into a hidden survival bunker, should not be packaged by the morning news as an inspiring tale of youthful determination and American grit. It is a damning indictment of the American economic system. The country possesses the immense unparalleled industrial capacity, raw materials, and technological wealth to mass-produce millions of advanced commercial aircraft, yet it fundamentally and systematically refuses to build basic, affordable, emotional people and dignified shelter for the working-class citizens who physically keep the national economy running. The monthly rent is exorbitant everywhere in the country because the nation actively built a financialized economy that aggressively treats human housing primarily as a speculative investment portfolio to be leveraged by Wall Street hedge funds rather than a basic, fundamental human necessity to be lived in safely. National wage growth for the working class has deliberately and artificially stagnated since the 1970s, while every single metric of the cost of living, from groceries to healthcare to education, has violently multiplied. She did not choose to live in a gutted cargo fuselage because she is a romantic, free-spirited dreamer chasing a minimal, trendy aesthetic. She became a tactical, off-grid engineer out of absolute, unyielding financial necessity. The current economic system offered her a stark, binary choice between lifelong financial indentured servitude to a corporate landlord and actual, literal homelessness on the street. She simply did the math and chose a $400 aluminum loophole hidden in the deep woods. Until the fundamental, underlying mathematics of American housing and wage disparity radically change, the working class will simply keep finding these extreme, invisible loopholes, quietly and efficiently surviving in the dark shadows of the exact things the country carelessly throws away. If this documentation provided you with value, subscribe and leave a like to support the work. Log the city you are watching from in the comments and tell us which specific engineering tactic in her survival setup you consider the most critical.
We look at an idea of living in a resting, declared airplane, fearless, and our first eating into bright her resilience. We applaud her relentless agility, but look closer. Her story is not a dream of the American dream. It is a desperate survival tactic in a country that has pride, each of our basic human dignity. The true lesson here, however, has mirrored up to our sagittal burrito. We live in a nation presenting the world and technology to come was the key. Thus, we have allowed corporate to turn a fundamental human rights sector into a speculative luxury asset. When a hardworking young woman is forced to find refuge inside industrial scarf mental such to accept like long that the system has just failed. It's heartbroken, it promised to the next generation. We must stop romanticizing extreme poverty and calling it risk. We must stop demanding that our young people become tactical or risk survivalists simply to avoid homelessness. Let this story be our wake up call. We need to fight for future graduate affordable housing, the cornerstone of society, because no one should have to quietly survive in the shadow of the thing with the way.